The envelope was already on the table when I walked in. No handshake, no smile, not even a glance from Robert, the CFO. Just that thin cream rectangle with my name typed across it too neatly, like someone had proofread it 10 times. Effective immediately, he said without looking up. You've been reassigned. Executive Secretary. Compensation adjusted accordingly. That was it. No explanation, no congratulations. Just a demotion and a 60% pay cut, handed down like an afterthought. My fingers brushed the edge of the envelope, but I didn't open it right away. I couldn't. Not because I was shocked, but because something colder had already crept up the back of my neck. My name is Ashley Hart. I'm 41 years old. And until 7 minutes ago, I was Vice President of Global Contracts at Eastbridge Aerospace. Just last week, I closed the largest single deal in company history. A $500 million partnership with an international defense coalition. It had taken 9 months, sleepless nights, endless video calls across time zones, 12 flights to Europe and back. It nearly broke me, but I pulled it across the finish line. Alone. And now, on the very day the ink was drying, they stripped my title and my salary in one move. I should have fought back. I should have demanded an explanation. But I didn't. Instead, I smiled. Because this wasn't the time to argue. This was the time to remember. I remembered standing in the lobby just 30 minutes earlier, watching Lena step out of the elevator. Blonde hair tied back, a crisp white blouse bouncing on her heels like she had just won the lottery. She had been an intern once. My intern. I'd trained her, mentored her, told her which contracts could kill a deal and which loopholes could save one. She had no idea what she was doing back then. She still doesn't. Behind her was Robert, laughing. They shook hands like old allies. Neither noticed me standing there. Now here I was, holding a letter printed yesterday, informing me that the position I had built from scratch was no longer mine. Not just stripped, rewritten, erased. I opened the envelope at last. The language was sterile. Ashley Hart has been reassigned to the role of Executive Secretary effective immediately. Compensation adjustment, minus 60%. It almost made me laugh. After 2 decades of loyalty, of sacrifices, of winning contracts no one else could land, I was reduced to a title that wasn't even mine. I folded the letter carefully, slid it into my bag, and stood. I didn't speak. I didn't argue. Because they thought I was powerless. But I wasn't. I walked past my old office on the executive floor. The frosted glass door that once read, Ashley Hart, Vice President of Global Contracts, now stood blank. The nameplate was gone, not replaced, just wiped clean, as if I had never existed. I stood there for a long moment, not grieving, not yet, just memorizing every detail, every silence, every name. An intern carrying coffee trays stopped and tilted her head. Do you need help finding something? She asked, not recognizing me. I smiled tightly. Number, I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. And I walked away. 5 floors down, past the buzzing sales department and into the administrative wing, I found my new office. A cubicle. Windowless. Phoneless. The kind with low walls and flickering fluorescent lights. Someone had left a half-broken stapler and a tangled phone cord in the drawer. It smelled like toner and cheap disinfectant. On the monitor was a post-it note. Ashley, I'll set you up by EOD. HR. I sat in the flimsy chair and looked around. Across from me, tacked to the wall, was the brand-new company org chart. My eyes scanned it slowly, desperate to see my name somewhere. Anywhere. But it wasn't there. Not at the top, not in the footnotes, not even in the project contributors section. Instead, where my title used to be, it read, Director of Strategic Partnerships, Lena Voss. Her headshot beamed back at me. Underneath, a caption in bold letters. A bold new chapter in Eastbridge's global future. Something in my chest twisted. It wasn't anger, not yet. It was mourning. Mourning for the version of me that had given up birthdays, family dinners, and entire years of life for this company. I thought of the contract I had just closed. The one I had poured everything into. Every clause, every risk assessment, every nuance of translation. Especially clause 44F. I remembered drafting it quietly, late at night, after a tense dinner in Geneva. The client's COO had leaned across the table and said, "We've been burned before. If you're replaced, the deal is off." So I wrote the clause myself, in plain, unambiguous language. Operational authority shall remain under Ashley Hart. Reassignment permits client to void contract in full. They hadn't noticed. Or maybe they didn't care. But I did. The first morning in my cubicle felt like walking through the ruins of my own life. I wasn't used to silence. For years, my days had been full of ringing phones, conference calls, negotiations that stretched past midnight. Now the only sound was the flickering bulb above me and the occasional shuffle of papers from the admin team 2 rows down. No one looked at me. No one spoke to me. It was as if overnight I'd been recategorized from leader to ghost. Around 10:15, a junior assistant stopped by with an armful of folders. "These need to go to Lena for the leadership meeting tomorrow," she said, barely glancing at me. I took the folders without a word. As she walked away, I noticed one had a page sticking out, a slide deck. On it, my photo from the Munich signing ceremony. The champagne glasses were still in our hands. But across my face, someone had drawn a thick red X. In the final version, my name had been replaced. Lead negotiator, Lena Voss. I stared at it for a long time. Not because of the X, but because I remembered that exact moment. The relief, the exhaustion, the pride. I had thought it was the start of something. Instead, it was already being rewritten. I slipped the folder into my desk drawer and pulled open the filing cabinet below. Rows of binders stared back at me. My binders. The ones I had built over years, color-coded, indexed, annotated by hand. Except now, every tab that once bore my initials, A.H., had been overwritten with L.V. Lena's mark was scrawled across the work I had bled into. Every negotiation note, every compliance review, every draft. That was when the grief started to settle in. Not loud, not angry. Quiet, like a fog wrapping around me. They hadn't just taken my title. They had erased me. I left the office that night without saying a word to anyone. I walked out past the gleaming glass lobby, past the receptionist who didn't even raise her head, and out into the cool evening air. On the subway ride home, I scrolled through my phone out of habit. Texts from my mother asking if I'd be coming to Sunday dinner. A photo from my sister of her kids at soccer practice. I hadn't replied to either. For months, work had been my excuse. Now, staring at the empty seat across from me, I realized I had sacrificed everything for people who couldn't even say my name out loud. That night, I didn't sleep. Instead, I pulled out the thick leather-bound planner I'd carried for years. Inside, tucked behind boarding passes and scribbled notes, was the copy of the Geneva Clause. Clause 44, F. My handwriting, my initials, my quiet insurance policy. Operational authority shall remain under Ashley Hart. Reassignment permits client to void contract in full. I traced the words with my finger. Simple. Director. Ironclad. They had laughed me out of the building, demoted me to a secretary, cut my salary by more than half. But they hadn't read the contract closely enough. They hadn't realized that the entire $500 million deal was tethered to me, not to Eastbridge. The next morning, I returned to the office like nothing had happened. My blazer pressed, my hair tied back, my face calm. No one expected me to show up after what they'd done. That was the first advantage I had. They thought I was broken. At lunch, while the others gathered around Lena in the executive dining room, I sat quietly at my desk. And I began writing emails. Not job applications. Not complaints. Blueprints. I reached out to old contacts. Engineers I had flown across continents with. Compliance officers who owed me deadlines. Procurement leads who still trusted me more than their own bosses. I didn't ask for favors. I asked questions. Gentle ones. If a contract like ours were to collapse, would your team have the capacity to pick it up? If the lead negotiator became available, would that be of interest to your firm? I wasn't planting seeds. I was testing the soil. That Thursday, my phone rang with a number I didn't recognize. Washington, D.C. Ashley Hart? A calm voice asked. Yes. My name is Claire Reynolds. I'm an independent contract attorney. I've been reviewing the Eastbridge-Urava agreement. Did you author Clause 44F? My heart jumped. I did. There was a pause. Then she said, It's airtight. Simple, enforceable in any jurisdiction. They don't realize what you gave them. I leaned back in my chair, my hand resting on the drawer that held the original contract. For the first time in weeks, I exhaled. Because now I knew. I hadn't been erased. I was the only name that still mattered. And when the time came, they would find out the hard way. Friday morning arrived like any other, but for me it was different. I tied my hair back, buttoned my blazer, and stood in front of the mirror longer than I should have. The woman staring back looked tired, not just from lack of sleep, but from years of being worn down in silence. On the train ride downtown, I thought about the cost of everything I'd given to Eastbridge. Not the money, not even the title, the real cost. I remembered a winter 2 years ago, just before Christmas. My mother called 3 times while I was at the airport in Frankfurt. I ignored the first 2 calls, promising myself I'd return it once I finished drafting a compliance note. By the time I answered, her voice was quiet. It's okay, Ashley, she said. We know you're busy. I had missed our family dinner that year, the first one in 17 years. She told me she understood, but I heard the hurt behind her words. And yet, I kept going. Always pushing forward, always telling myself it would be worth it. I remembered the hospital, too. Zurich, 6 months ago. I collapsed in my hotel room from dehydration and exhaustion after 3 consecutive nights of negotiations. The doctor told me to rest. Instead, I pulled on a blazer over the hospital gown and dialed into a 7 a.m. call with Robert and Lena. Neither of them noticed the IV line taped to my arm. I remembered birthdays missed, vacations canceled, friends who stopped calling because the answer was always the same. Sorry, I can't. Work. All of it. For what? To sit in a cubicle with my name scrubbed from the walls. That morning, as I walked into the building, I passed Lena in the lobby. She was laughing, surrounded by 2 junior associates carrying her files. She carried herself like she'd already been in charge for years. Her eyes brushed over me, but there was no recognition. Not even a flicker. I kept walking. At my desk, the whispers had already started. I caught fragments in the break room, on the elevator. Did you hear? Ashley's out. Lena's taking over. Biggest contract in history, and they pushed her aside. No one said it to my face, but silence can be louder than words. That afternoon, Robert called Lena into his office. The glass walls didn't hide the scene. He leaned back in his chair, grinning while Lena flipped through a slide deck. I caught a glimpse of the title, Leadership Vision, Next Phase, my work, my notes, my deal. And yet I wasn't angry. Not in the way people might expect. Rage burns too hot, too fast. What I felt was colder, steadier, like steel cooling into shape, because I still had the one thing they didn't: Clause 44F. The more they celebrated, the less they looked at me. The less they looked at me, the stronger I became. That evening, as the office emptied, I stayed behind. I sat at my cubicle, the hum of fluorescent lights buzzing overhead, and opened my planner. Inside was the copy of the Geneva Clause. My handwriting. My initials. I read it again and again until the words blurred. Operational authority shall remain under Ashley Hart. Reassignment permits client to void contract in full. It wasn't pride I felt. It was clarity. They believed they had erased me. But they hadn't realized that I was the contract. Without me, there was nothing. As the clock ticked past 8 p.m., my phone buzzed. A message from Claire Reynolds, the contract attorney who had called me the day before. Ashley, I've reviewed Clause 44F against international enforcement standards. It's airtight. If the client invokes it, Eastbridge loses everything. Call me when you're ready. I didn't reply. Not yet. Timing mattered. I leaned back in my chair and let the silence sink in. For the first time in months, I didn't feel erased. I felt present, dangerous even, because they had underestimated me. And underestimation, I realized, was the most powerful weapon I had. The next day, Lena left for Paris. First-class boarding pass in hand, fresh briefcase swinging by her side. She smiled as if she had earned the right to represent Eastbridge. But I didn't stop her. I didn't say a word. Because I knew something she didn't. She was walking straight into a room where my name still carried the only weight that mattered. And soon enough, everyone at Eastbridge would discover that the deal wasn't theirs. It was mine. Monday didn't start with a bang. It started with a post-it on my monitor. Please attend 2 p.m. handover call with Lena. I stared at it until the ink felt smug. Then I peeled it off and slid it into my planner, right beside the page that held my copy of Clause 44F. I didn't storm upstairs. I didn't argue. I did something quieter. At 9:12 a.m., I called Claire Reynolds, the independent contract attorney who had reviewed the deal. Before we do anything, I said, I want to make sure whatever happens is clean. It will be, she replied. You drafted it plainly for a reason. At 9:37 a.m., I wrote a 3-sentence email to the client's COO. No accusations, no drama, just facts. For your awareness and in the interest of implementation integrity, Eastbridge has reassigned operational authority away from me as of Friday. Please see Clause 44F of the executed agreement, attached, regarding your rights if the named oversight is altered. I remain available to answer factual questions about the negotiation history and risk mitigations. I didn't hit send right away. I read it 3 times, then sent it. A minute later, I forwarded the same note to the client's general counsel. No commentary, only the clause highlighted. At 10:12 a.m., Lena texted the leadership chat a photo from Charles de Gaulle. En route to the kickoff will make us proud. The reactions flooded in. Rockets, trophies, a champagne bottle. Robert added, let's give them a show. No one tagged me. I kept my head down and did something else. At 11:04 a.m., I exported the master risk register and archived the email thread where the client first insisted on named oversight. I copied only what I had authored, nothing more. Facts, saved. That was it. The first ripple hit at 1:26 p.m. A calendar alert popped up on my screen and vanished. Kickoff. Postponed. No explanation. 2 minutes later, someone in sales shouted down the aisle, did they just cancel? By 2:03 p.m., Slack threads that usually died in pleasantries started breathing hard. Anyone heard from legal? Why is the MSO showing pending validation? Do not discuss in channel. Move to call. The air pressure changed. You can feel panic before it speaks. At 3:18 p.m., my inbox lit up with the subject line you don't want to see. Notice Clause 44, F. It was from the client's legal department. Short, cold, surgical. Pursuant to Clause 44F, all transition activities are suspended. We will not recognize substitutes for post-deal operational oversight. If Ms. Hart is not restored to the role specified in the agreement, Urava will consider the contract void. They CC'd Robert, legal, compliance, the board distribution, and, pointedly, investors at eastbridge.com. They CC'd me too. I didn't move. I just watched the message count climb in the corner of my screen like a blood pressure cuff. 11 unread. 23. 41. Someone jogged past my cubicle. Then another. The hum broke. The calls started. Get Robert. Where's legal? Why is procurement flagging all supplier POs red? In the glass wall of the conference room, I saw Lena's smiling selfie in the leadership chat replaced by a block of text. She was at the client's lobby. Security had asked her to wait, then to leave. At 3:42 p.m., an email from finance, revenue guidance update, internal only, rolled through and then instantly recalled. Too late. I'd seen the first line. With the suspension of the Urava order, Q3 guidance will be revised downward. By 4:05 p.m., SAP threw up a yellow bar on my screen. Order 753, URV suspended, legal hold. That's what system collapse looks like in real life. Not servers going dark. It's 1,000 dependencies seizing at once. Supplier slots released, credit covenants warming red, cash forecasts rewritten, bonuses dissolving mid-sentence. No one came to my desk. Not yet. But I could hear Robert's voice through the glass like heat behind a door. How did 44 degrees Fahrenheit get in there? Someone mumbled. We never saw it. Then a second voice. It's in the executed copy. Plain language. A third. Who approved the reassignment without a legal variance? Silence. At 4:19 p.m., the client's counsel sent the second note, the one that lands like concrete. Absent restoration of Ms. Hart's oversight within 24 hours, Urava will exercise its right to void the agreement in full. All obligations are dissolved upon notice. They CC'd the same list and added press at eastbridge.com. Legal called PR called no one. The draft statement never left a Google Doc. At 5:02 p.m., my phone started ringing. Unknown numbers, internal extensions. Claire called once. I answered her. It's moving, she said. I know. Do you want to be restored? No, I said. My voice surprised me with how steady it was. I want to be done. She exhaled slowly. Then say nothing. You've already said what matters. By 5:40 p.m., Lena was back in a taxi to the airport. Someone said she cried in a bathroom stall. Maybe she did. Maybe she didn't. The truth is less cinematic. Most people just sit very still when they realize a door won't open. At 6:11 p.m., Robert finally called me. I watched the phone buzz and placed it face down. He called again, then legal, then HR. The sixth call was my desk line, still not set up. At 6:58 p.m., I typed a resignation letter with 2 sentences and no adjectives. I printed it, signed it, and walked it to HR. No one stopped me. No one looked up. When I reached the lobby, the receptionist glanced at me, but didn't say hello. That felt right. I pushed through the revolving door into the evening air and kept walking until the building was a reflection in a window, something that used to be mine. My phone vibrated the whole way home. 51 calls, 62, 79. The 82nd came at 11:47 p.m., Manhattan area code. I didn't answer. I set the phone on my kitchen counter, opened my planner, and slid the copy of Clause 44F back into its place. The apartment was quiet in the way offices never are. Power doesn't always sound like shouting. Sometimes it sounds like a phone buzzing on a table you're not rushing to pick up. I poured a glass of water, turned off the kitchen light, and stood in the doorway long enough for my eyes to adjust. Tomorrow would be different. Not because they wanted it to be, because I had decided it would be. The phone buzzed again, once. I looked at the screen, at the new number with the same area code, and felt the shift before I answered. "Ms. Hart?" a voice said when I picked up. "I think the timing is right." The call came from a number I didn't recognize, but the voice on the other end was calm, deliberate. "Ms. Hart? This is Daniel Rhodes, Vice President at Ventra Aero. We spoke briefly 3 months ago. You told me the timing wasn't right." I remembered. Ventra was Eastbridge's fiercest competitor, always circling, always waiting for a weakness. Back then, I had declined. I was loyal, I'd said. Loyalty had cost me everything. Daniel didn't waste words. "We've been following the Yurova fallout. It seems the contract collapsed because of your removal." I didn't confirm. I didn't deny. Silence is a language, too. He continued. "Yurova's board reached out to us this morning. They're not abandoning the jets. They just won't work with Eastbridge. They specifically requested you. Their words, not mine. Non-negotiable asset." For a moment, I just listened. The kitchen was dark, my phone warm in my hand, the city humming faintly outside. "What exactly are you offering?" I asked finally. "Lead negotiator, full authority from strategy to delivery. Double your previous base, equity stake, relocation flexibility, and one condition." I waited. "You choose your team. No exceptions." I thought about the cubicle, the empty nameplate, the X across my photo, my so-called mentors who had erased me overnight. And then I thought about the people who had stood with me at 3 a.m. calls, engineers who trusted me, procurement leads who picked up when no one else did. I smiled into the silence. "Then my answer is yes." 2 weeks later, I walked into Ventra's headquarters in Washington, D.C. Sunlight cut across the marble floor, reflecting off the glass walls. A receptionist handed me a new access badge. My name was etched in black. Ashley Hart, Chief Global Contracts Officer. It wasn't the title that mattered. It was the weight of seeing my name intact. Visible. Undeniable. By 9:30 a.m., I was seated at a walnut conference table across from Yurova's board. The same contract, the same $500 million value, but with a new header. Ventra Aero, lead oversight, Ashley Hart. The client COO smiled at me. "We told Eastbridge what would happen if they replaced you. They didn't listen. We don't make the same mistake twice." I nodded, steady. "Neither do I." When I signed, it wasn't just ink on paper. It was restoration. Every sleepless night, every sacrifice, every scar I carried from Eastbridge became proof that I hadn't been erased. I had been underestimated. And underestimation, I had learned, can be turned into power if you know when to stay silent and when to move. The news broke within hours. Ventra secures. Historic $500 million jet deal. Former Eastbridge Vice President leads agreement. Bloomberg, Reuters, the Financial Times. My name in every headline. Inside Eastbridge, chaos followed. Robert resigned within a week. Lena's promotion disappeared from the website overnight. A rumor spread that the board had threatened to sue its own executives for negligence. I didn't celebrate their downfall. Not really. The truth is, it didn't bring joy. It brought release. They had gambled on silence. They thought silence meant weakness. But silence can be strategy too. And mine had been timed to perfection. 3 months later, I walked past a newsstand in D.C. A headline caught my eye. Eastbridge announces 300 layoffs amid failed contract losses. A photo of Robert stared back at me, shoulders hunched, eyes hollow. I didn't buy the paper. I didn't need to. Their collapse wasn't my story anymore. My story was the one unfolding upstairs, in a new boardroom, with a new team, building something that couldn't be erased by a missing nameplate or a thick red X. That afternoon, as I sat in my office reviewing next quarter's strategy, my phone buzzed. A message. From Lena. Ashley, can we talk? I think I made a mistake. I read it once. Twice. Then I locked the screen and slid the phone into my desk drawer. No anger, no satisfaction, just clarity. There was nothing left to say.